And welcome to the second meeting of the Warren Astronomical Society of 2023. I'm your president, Bob Tremblay. Um, it is time to renew your memberships if you hadn't. You can pay via PayPal on our website by clicking join. Do we have any new members tonight? I see a few of them. Well, if we have new members, welcome. Good to see you. Um, Going to do some quick officer reports. We still need an AV IT minion to help do our broadcasts. Yeah, right now it's Adrian, and he doesn't want to do it, and I can't blame him. So we'd like somebody to do that, and it would be nice to have somebody to help us with our social media platforms, just advertising the club and stuff like that. Um, I have been in contact with the Metro Parks and our rep. I'll be meeting with them tomorrow morning at 9:30. They have a whole bunch of events that they would like to have us do, and they are listing our open houses on the fourth Saturday of the month on their calendar, which is a good thing. Do we want to do anything with them? Is anybody interested in hosting anything like an astronomy workshop? And I've also mentioned to them the Perseus meteor shower because we've done that before with them, and that wasn't on their list, strangely. Discussion group. Sometimes on like the fourth week of the month before our open house, typically we've held a discussion group, but for obvious reasons, it's been a little difficult to do this in person. If anybody would be interested in hosting an in-person discussion group, this month would generally be scheduled for Tuesday, January 24th. There's been some talk about hosting it at a planetarium. That would be cool. So if we don't want to do an in-person discussion group, we could host an online one and just have an informal chat session like we've done before the start of this meeting. So we can talk about that during the break. Officer reports. Dale Partin, he is our first vice president. He's our lecturer tonight. He's always looking for new presenters. If you have a 15-minute short presentation or a 1 hour long presentation, please let him know and he will schedule you. I don't believe we've had anybody talk about gravity wave detectors, so there's a suggestion for you. Jeff McLeod is our second VP and planetary chair. We are having an open house on Saturday, January 28th. So let's hope for clear skies. Adrian Bradley is our treasurer, and I don't know what is in the treasury. So can you give us a quick report on what's going on with the treasury?
Treasury has stayed the same. We're basically around 30,000. I can give some accurate numbers for really quick. I'd like to say hello to my good friend David, who's sitting over there. How you doing?
Hi, Adrian.
And let me get some numbers from our sources. Now, petty cash, Dale Teamy says he's going to send a nasty note to my house if I don't put some of that petty cash in the bank. We're sitting on, I happen to have a safe, and I've put what amounts to around $700 or $800 of cash money into the safe. I promise I won't spend it on astronomy, knickknacks, and odds and ends. We're sitting at $353.92 in our PayPal account. And part of that is we are receiving memberships. I saw a report that we have roughly 10 or 11 memberships that have been renewed through the mail. And as soon as I get those to my house, I'll be depositing checks. I'll try and stay on top of depositing checks a little quicker through this membership season. I know a few may have not seen it cash until, recently. And so, as far as the treasury, that's basically it for the report.
Alrighty.
Questions? You all have been sending emails to treasurer@warrenastro.org, and I've been receiving them and responding. So, thanks for that.
Thank you, Adrian. Our secretary is the illustrious Mark Kedzier. His minutes are in the newsletter. Do you have anything to add?
Yes, I would like to illustriously, however you said that there, let you know that we still have 6 calendars left. So buy early, buy often. That's all I have to report.
All righty. Our outreach officer is Kevin McLaughlin. see on. See him on. So, if you have any outreach reports that you have done, let him know so we can get that in the our newsletter. And publications, Dale Teamy. Let me put the link to our latest award-winning newsletter in chat. There is our latest newsletter in the chat. He's always looking for interesting new content, and officers like me need to start thinking about getting their reports ready for next month. So at this point, I would like to open the floor to David Levy for his poem of the meeting.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bob. It's really good to be here. I missed the first meeting because I couldn't connect somehow. I tried and just couldn't. But I just wanted to report that the sun is extremely active right now. One very large naked eye sunspot that I saw today. And there are 83 sunspots that I counted on the sun today and about 15 prominences. So our sun is having a lot of fun. Also, I did get a look at Comet Zwicky Transit Facility the other night through binoculars. It's big fuzzy in binoculars. Haven't seen it in the telescope yet, oddly, but this is a nice comet and I'm enjoying it. For my quotation tonight, I think a lot of you have heard that David Crosby, one of the lead singers of the Byrds and of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, passed away today. And so my quotation is going to be from what I think is his most famous song, Turn, Turn, Turn. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And I'm not going to sing any more of it, but I'd like to read the text that comes directly from Ecclesiastes. It is probably the oldest written lyrics for a song in rock history. Anyway, here goes. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to sow, to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time to rend and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. And finally, a time for war and a time for peace. I swear it is not too late. Thank you very much. And back to you, Bob.
All right, thank you, David. Special interest groups. David just mentioned solar, so let me share my screen because I have got some fantastic pictures from NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory. And move that thing out of the way. Can you all see the sun here?
Oh, yeah.
That is all right. Let me zoom in. So zoom in. There's a monster. Hello, zoom. Thank you. You mentioned 80 something. Look at that. Look at that monster. That is absolutely huge. And in the northern hemisphere, just crazy amount of sunspots. And here's an animation. Take a look at what's going on in the northern hemisphere here. It is just flaring like crazy. I think I mentioned last time I've got spaceweather.com's app on my smartphone, and I get flare announcements. And during the course of the day, my phone is just practically vibrating off the table with flare announcements lately. So that's just mesmerizing. And here is the corona. And again, this solar maximum is pretty time for the sun. Hello, why did you stop? But anyway, I'll stop sharing and back to that. So yeah, the sun is very, very active. Let's see, is Riyadh on right now? Yes, he is. Hi, anything to say about double stars? Did you view me
Um,
last time?
Yeah, we have an open house on the 28th. So I'll have a list of favorite double stars right now. And also, if we can use the spectrometer that we have now, the new one, to experiment with it a little bit, we'll be doing that. So hopefully, we'll have clear skies and we'll get a little busy. Thank you.
That spectrometer, are we going to be able to get any images from that or anything that we're going to be able to share at the club?
Yeah, actually, the way it works is that you have to take an image of the spectra of the star that you're looking at, or maybe even a deep sky object, some of the brightest ones only, I guess. And then there's software that we have also purchased that does the analysis to show you what elements you're looking at. So absolutely, we'll be able to uh, show the members what we're looking at and what's the use of the equipment.
Well, that will be some cool new content for a future newsletter. Thank you, Riyadh.
Well,
Um, one of the things I'd like to do now is do a short in the news. And one of the things I'd like to say, I'm posting this in chat, is that I get notifications from the IAU. I signed up. I get when new asteroids gets named, a bulletin comes out, and I peruse that every time. And the authors of the Astronomy Picture of the Day website have both gotten asteroids named after them, so that's pretty cool. And I let Bob Nemiroff of the MTU know that. I've actually met him a couple times. I emailed that to him, and the link to the bulletin, and he said the other guy got one too, and I'm kind of embarrassed I didn't notice that because I saw Bob's first. So you may have heard some stuff on the news about a green comet. Well, I just posted some stuff in chat there. There is a great article in Sky and Telescope which shows you how to find it, where it is, and it's got pictures and animations, and that's a very good article. The other link there is from NASA's small body database browser, and you can see the orbit of the comet and that kind of stuff. Now, the MPC, the Minor Planet Center, lists it as a hyperbolic comet, meaning that it's coming from out system and it's going out system. But a lot of the articles I've seen are talking about it coming, it was here 50,000 years ago, and I'm like, if it's a hyperbolic comet, it ain't coming back. So I'm not really sure what's going on with the news versus what's in the databases, but be that as it may. So that was the quick in the news. Do we have any observing report times and astrophotos?
Well, I have one.
Of course you do.
Yep, let me,
Kind of hoping
I'll
you
go
would.
through, I'll do it like this. I'll just share screen two. Got a bunch of screens here. And I'm sharing this screen with, so once it got clear, this is what you can get from Ascoda. This is it's a upper Bortle 4 sky. And this is surprisingly around the same number in the thumb of Michigan, overlooking Saginaw Bay right here. Another Bortle 4 sky. These skies considered pretty dark. Now, where I went to do this image,
That is a really cool image.
which one? The one that we're seeing overlooking the lake and
No, the road with snow.
oh
Well,
yeah.
that's a really cool image.
Yeah, that's I think that's was it that's the Saginaw Bay. So the few clear days we got, I went out maybe a couple hours after sunset and was able to take some images. And whenever I can get the Pelican along with the North American in a wide field image, and then the Sator region. The crescent didn't show up so well.
Oh, satellite too, I see.
Yep, plane. Dots are
Plane.
plane,
Oh,
long
that's the
strings of
flashing. Oh, okay.
satellites, and something that tapers. Now, this is Alcade. That's Mizar. So I'm setting up for what it is I was after with this image. This was on the 16th. So I believe this comet is now brighter, and I believe it's in this region, as opposed to where it was when I took the shot. What's always interesting is when you get specks of deep sky objects, and you can tell that the speck you got was a deep sky object. Now, with the noise reduction I have here, it isn't as it isn't as brilliant, but the only way you can tell this is a comet, and prior to me noise reducing it, was the look it had. You had the halo, you had the teardrop shape of a comet. I took a couple other images. I'll show a couple more and then hand it back over. See, there's the comet right there. And if I've looked at comets visually. I know a number of us have looked at them visually through telescopes. And as a reminder, there's a lot of haze here, but the comet's still shown through the haze. And that's when I realized, okay, this comet is going to be pretty, it may be a brighter comet than I thought. That didn't work out so well. It glows differently. And when I shot it, I didn't have so much of the green. But by now, we're seeing images, we're seeing, zoom ins. This is a wide field shot, and the comet still appeared. It's a little bit tougher it wasn't as tough as I thought it would be to see the comet. The naked eye, I couldn't see it. None of this. If I should have taken a, completely visual shot, and you would have seen how this was murky down here, and you just have a couple of stars, and that would be about it. But I was surprised the comet shone through the murkiness, the haze, the SQML meter pointing up here was around the 21.05, which is not bad. This image, it maxed out at around 21.23, and I was able to get this much on that particular image. So I'm going to stop sharing all of this, basically to say that I got a view of the comet, although it was a picture, a small picture of it, and not much to write home to, but I was surprised I was able to find it in my wide angle shot. And so
I
it
am going to
can only
have
get
to go
brighter
out
from
and look
here.
for that thing now.
So what time did it come up?
At that time, Dale, it came up around 11:30. It's coming up earlier and earlier now. So
Okay.
I expect that Sky Safari will tell us, but it's gonna be earlier and earlier. Oh, in fact, it came up and said, plan your observing of the comet. So yeah, it's actually does not set anymore. It's circumpolar now.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as it's dark enough, look for the comet. And right now, its location, it's low to the horizon, but right now it's close to Draco. Closer to Draco than it was when I took this shot. It was more within Buotes, but now it's getting closer to Draco. And in fact, off of Alcade, the Ursa Major, it is, it's a bit of an angle, but it's rising with or coming up as a dipper comes back up to the northwest. North, is it northwest? Northeast. Sorry about that. So yeah, pretty soon it looks like it's going to be, it might be somewhere around Dipper, but I'd have to look it up. So look for Ursa Major, and the comet won't be, or Draco, and the comet will not be far behind. And let's see what it says.
Anybody else have
Magnitude
any
6 + 5.
Anybody else have any other observing
4.5.
reports or astrophotos or anything like that?
Endless clouds.
Endless clouds. Let's talk about the beautiful clouds of Michigan. I picked my brother up. I picked my brother up from the airport. This is God, 2 decades ago, and he was coming in from LA, and it was overcast. What a surprise! And he's like, "Man, Michigan is always like the land of Mordor," and it always stuck with me because clouds. Well, we are. We usually have a flurry of observing reports and a lot of uh, pictures going on here, but we don't. So, tell you, we're going to take a break early. Dale, can you start at 8:20?
Yes.
All right, so let's take a break. Come back in about 26 minutes or so. 8:20, we will start our feature presentation. For now, it's just going to be informal chat, and if our members have any questions, astronomy questions for each other, throw them out. But go ahead and have an informal chat for the next 20 minutes or so. And
So, Bob, I've got a quick question
Yes.
about
What you got?
the Vatican ambassador program that I'm
Uh-oh.
getting close to receiving. It's next week, Wednesday. I have the Zoom call, and I'm trying to work with my parish to get the certificate that I'm missing to work with young children.
Hmm.
Is that a program that most parishes offer, where it's like you do a couple-hour class?
That is what I heard. I heard it was the diocese that offers it, but Brother Guy said that the Detroit diocese was doing a whole huge rearrangement of how they were doing that, and that's why we don't have a whole lot of ambassadors from the Detroit area. So if you found one, I mean, even I can't give, the solar system ambassador thing was not enough. They wanted the
Certificate.
the certificate from the diocese. Yeah. So if I was going to do outreach for the VOF, I would have to go through that as well. So
Yeah, which they're gonna meet with me anyways. They reached out to me, so they let me know Brother Guy had mentioned. Now, interesting enough, those that are listening, Brother Guy is giving the talk. I don't know if you know about it, Bob, but one of my other astronomy clubs has him tabbed to do a remote talk tomorrow
oh,
at
I didn't know
7.
that. No.
Yep. Yeah, and you all are invited. I will post the
That's cool.
I will post the link in the password. I'm gonna find it right quick. Low brow.
You know what he's talking about?
Um, I do not know, but I am going to try. And
I'd message him,
find
but
out.
it's late in Rome right now, which is where he is. He's going to be in Rome, and what's really cool is the room where they've got the AV set up for that. The background behind him is a shelf of some really old books and stuff, and it looks like a fake background until he goes up and takes a book off the shelf. It's pretty cool.
Okay, so here I'll share my screen really quickly. Screen 2, I have the email that this information right here is basically what you need you can join. We use Zoom over on the lowbrow side of things. He is going to talk about what's surfacing about Bennu. And we do our talks
Ooh.
first, then our business meeting. So if you only want to come for the talk, you can come for the talk, and then you can go, because we do a little break, and then you can go before we do our little business portion if you don't want to hang out and hear about what we're going to be doing.
I
This
know
is
that Brother Bob Mackey, who's now the curator of meteorites at the Vatican Observatory, is going to be having access to some of the Bennu materials at the Johnson Space Center. So we're going to have some inside access to that stuff. And I'm just like, it would be very cool to have a piece of asteroid in lucite. I
yeah.
don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon, though.
And 7:30 p.m. whatever that date amounts to, because today's the 19th, so it's 1/20/2023. So for those that are interested, want to hear from Brother Guy, who I guess he's going to become my boss, but we're all Catholic, so we have a few bosses
I
that go
call him
all the
my
way to the
boss, but he
top.
says actually the board is my boss. So, but I talk
Yeah,
to him all the time. So,
but that is coming, and
oh, that's cool.
you all are invited to log
I'm
in and
going to copy that down. That is tomorrow.
yeah.
So Adrian, are you going to be working for the Vatican Observatory?
No,
Um,
he's going to become an ambassador. The VOF has an ambassador program, kind of loosely modeled off NASA's Solar System Ambassador program. They're doing the same thing. They're cheerleaders for the Vatican Observatory Foundation, and they will be talking about the history of stuff. I'm actually trying to get them to get some canned presentations done that we can do. We've only got a couple, but we got a brand new guy who's a ambassador from Puerto Rico, and he just posted an article on our website about a female astronomer from like the late 1800s, early 1900s, who was very famous in Puerto Rico, and I'd never heard of her, so that was pretty interesting.
yeah, my first act will probably be to talk about my Chasing Dark Skies project, which the Hollandball residents will be a part of this effort, because I'll be coming to his house and hitting the sky meter, because we're all curious.
Yeah, the day you come is the day it turns from Bortle 5 to 6.
Well,
Because you
it
have a meter
takes
and I can actually measure. It's like, oh my, it's worse than I thought.
yeah, and now the numbers can change. I take several readings. At the shot where I had the forest and Orion with the Milky Way over it, it was reading 20.9 for a few clicks. Transparency, or upward haze, not maybe noctilucent clouds. Things can change the reading, but over 15 to 20 minutes, you start to see the same numbers. Then you get a good idea of what's out there. It ended up coming in at about 21.1, and it was hitting that number consistently. And I said, that's probably you get an idea of what a real number is. And the average there was like 21.1. But for a while, the quality changes as you go. The seeing and the transparency can change while you're there.
Well, the light pollution map, that website, the one that you can click on and sort of say, hey, what's the the zone here? But that data is from 2015.
Yeah, that's the
So until
problem.
they update that, it's like that's kind of what we use, and like, well, 7.
Yeah, so you can
8 years old.
2015 to 2023. That's what, 8 years. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see the degradation over that 8-year span because we have a number from 2015. I basically have shown that there were some Bortle 3 zones, Alcona, all of this stuff in the tip of the thumb, Alcona, Bortle 3 zones here are now Bortle 4. They're high Bortle 4 zones because the numbers are sitting at 21.2. I can't get 21.3. And if I wanted Bortle 3, they have to read 21.49 and they have to read 21.49 consistently or higher. High as I get. And that, if you go and cheat and aim it at a tree, it's a bad reading. You have to get the sky and look for a part of the sky that the Milky Way isn't in. You can take different readings, but it becomes an aggregate reading because it's it all. And this is now how I want to say, okay, January 2021. That's the number I'm looking for. Excuse me. So yeah, so that's what it's like. Now you can see why I go into the areas at the tip of the thumb and the northeast side. I need to come out here to the northwest. Those pockets of night sky along Lake Huron and Saginaw Bay, those pockets get to a Bortle 4 darkness. They used to get to a Bortle 3 darkness. We actually have a town here in Canada that's very easy to see in an image that I took. There's this bright spot off in the distance over Lake Huron. The Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, from which our beloved David is also a member. The gentleman knew what town. I think the town of Gerhard was the town, and he just guessed right away that that was the town that was showing all the light pollution as it was going up. So I said, well, yeah, I tend to capture it all. Over in Europe, they've got serious problems too, finding places that are dark. We didn't mention the O3 finding that there's this arc around the Andromeda Galaxy, and we're still trying to, well, not we, but separate scientists are still trying to figure out where it is. Is it a remnant that's within our galaxy? They're speculating that it's actually out there with the Andromeda Galaxy, that it's a part of the structure out there, but we just don't know yet. And more work has to be done to to take the findings and do the imaging and spectroscopy and any other methods we have for determining distance, and then figure out what that is. But until go ahead.
Sorry, just real quick. When you get a chance, could you put the link in the chat from that night satellite image? Thank you.
Which one? Oh, Bob.
I think the one that Bob had up.
Yeah, Bob had that.
Yeah,
one
that's
up. I was
NASA's
just
Black
answering.
Marble. Hold on, yeah, I'll put it up there.
Bob will put it up for you.
It's a huge link.
At least that one's a little more up to date.
Now on the light pollution map, one that I tend to use with the color codes, the overlay that you can actually pick and sort of see your estimated Bortle zone and your SQM number.
Mm-hmm.
That's from 2015, but from the drop down box, they do have, if you just want to look at the image of the night sky or light pollution, they do have more recent. I think they go up to 2020.
Okay.
But it's not clickable, so you can't say, "Hey, what's the light reading here?" It's relative.
Yeah, they need more. I've tried to upload all of these readings to, and there's an app I have on my phone that takes all the readings. I've tried to contribute to that. I haven't reached out specifically to anyone to see if my work is helping, but essentially I would be mapping Michigan. When I go to Lake Hudson, which is a dark sky preserve, it's sitting at the border of Bortle 5 on, and I went where it was a pretty good dark night, no moon. People, or at least one person that was there, said this is a pretty good night. With my eyes, I was going, this is not good. And the meter kind of verified what I was seeing. It was on the bottom of Bortle 4, top of Bortle 5. And I don't know if there's a requirement for an SQM reading in order to be considered a dark sky, but it did disturb me that it that it had gotten that bright over at that park. So
I got some content to share. Sometimes astrophotographers, when it's cloudy, they'll go and reprocess old data or whatever, let new techniques or new software.
So astronomers in Michigan most of the time, you mean?
Right. well, the forum is called Cloudy Nights Forum, so you can go on there and you can, have open discourse about small objects. So here's one I reprocessed.
Oh, wow.
The Heart Nebula. And the data is 2 years old, but the technique I think is better. This is a 2-panel mosaic. But there's a new tool called Blur Exterminator.
yeah,
like it.
Blur Exterminator. So it helps to get more detail in these, everywhere. And it's had a lot of
that wouldn't be AI based, would it?
Astrophotography forums.
it would be.
What was the question? What?
AI?
Blur-
That wouldn't be AI based software.
It is.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. It doesn't add data. The data that you see on your screen is data you collected. You gathered those photons. So
It uses the point spread function.
Yeah, but what it does
yeah.
is people who were not in the know speculated that it grabbed Hubble data or whatever. It
That's the old
figures
version.
out. Yeah,
That's my new version.
That's new. Look how much clearer.
Wow.
So I changed my coloring a little bit,
Yeah, go back to your old version.
That's my old version. So my star shrink techniques and my noise. This is a lot noisier. So a lot of this is just processing skill, but software helps.
Yeah,
so that's what I redid.
Yeah, so it is AI, but it uses your own data, and I think it figures out how to probably look at that rosette right there. It figures out how to process it in a way where it just really, it sharpens, tightens it down. You see more of the structure. It used to take you more hours and a lot more painstaking work, and you'd have to have your own observatory to get something sharp like that. And Blur Exterminator basically,
at the Cone Nebula,
it does with the bits, it just tightens it up.
Cone. A lot of people call it the Christmas tree because it looks like that.
Yeah,
really cool. In IR, you can
there's
see
a little
stars at the tip of that cone.
Hubble's variable nebula over here on the left. Small.
Yep.
God, Dave.
Yeah, there are a lot of, you're already a very good astrophotographer when you can collect enough data, and your processing skills are there. And especially a lot of the horsehead shots have really come out. In fact, somebody from the Lowbrow Astronomy Club won an A-pod with his reprocessed version of the Horsehead.
And this
it
doesn't
didn't
even
look
have
much.
any narrowband. This is just all one-shot color broadband.
Yeah, and his winning shot, Dale, looked very similar to what
Who
you
was that?
have right here.
That is amazing.
I mean, it's the structures
What was
here.
his name? Do I know him?
I think his name is Barnard,
No, I don't think so.
33.
Yeah. Leo triplet. So I got better, the Hamburger Galaxy. I got some of these more faint things up here.
Yeah. And
I
that
think a
means
lot of this was just my technique a little bit.
you captured all of that. Yeah, I looked at some of the data. Somebody had M20, and I just looking at the screen at their old shot versus the new shot, that data was there. It may not have been as easily visible, but like I said, Blur Exterminator doesn't add anything. So you got that data, you just may not have seen it in your original. When you process it, it may not have.
This is my field of view, so it's relatively wide by
Yeah. There's another galaxy over there.
80 millimeter refractor.
Mm-hmm.
What else did I do?
How big are these images, Dale?
Define big. Field of view.
Size on your disk.
Okay, so this one here is 10.4 megabytes.
That's not big. Wow.
This one might be bigger. That's 21.6 because that's a mosaic. Okay, so this is 2 panels stitched together because my field of view wouldn't cover this whole thing.
I was honestly expecting that to be a whole lot bigger than 10, 20 megabytes.
This is a JPEG. Okay, so the TIFF file's too.
Oh, okay.
The TIFF file, uncompressed, that you're working with. The raw file coming out of the camera, each individual subframe is 50 megabytes for this.
Oh, okay.
It's 26 megapixels. So yeah, I'm gonna need another 10 terabyte hard drive here probably this year to store my data. But yeah,
funny you should mention that. One of the things
cheap nowadays.
The Vatican Observatory Summer School, which is going to be held next summer, one of the things they're talking about is doing data processing in the era of enormous amounts of data. And all of these surveys and new telescopes coming online, the amount of data they're generating is freaking enormous. And you starting to have to use AI techniques in order to analyze them and get stuff out of it. And I'm like, keep telling Brother Guy, I want to be a fly on the wall of that summer school really, really bad, because I used to be a programmer in another life. And the first time I became aware of large amounts of data in astronomy is when I gave the first presentation to the WASP, when I was talking about the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. And I had a solar system ambassador lecture with a mission specialist on that. And he said, the great thing about the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter is it's returning lots and lots of data. And the bad thing about the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, it's returning lots and lots of data. And so that's why they came up with 2 different citizen science projects to here's a 1 kilometer square section of the moon. What do you see on it? And they analyzed the entire surface of the moon that way. Wow. But Mars is the same way, no water, all surface area. And the cool thing about the reconnaissance orbiters is the fact that there's looking at things over time. And so both the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter and the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter have seen recent impacts. So
the same spot on a subsequent orbital pass is like, oh, something's new. Like, okay, so yeah.
Oh yeah, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, I think, has logged over 200 recent impacts.
Okay.
Since it's been in orbit, and the one in December.
You'd expect Mars to change because it has an atmosphere and wind, but like the moon, we don't think about it. But
There's
yeah,
actually
it still gets hit.
there's a there's a lunar observing program. I'm not sure whether it's Astronomical League or NASA, but when the moon is in first quarter and like half of the moon is dark, but you can still see it, they set up a video recorder and just record it with a GPS and a timestamp and that kind of stuff. And I've seen several images of flash, and so that's pretty cool. Well, yeah, the moon gets hit a lot. The LRO has seen lots of fresh craters. So yeah.
This
Thank
image here
goodness.
is interesting from the fact that it wasn't used a cooled camera. I used a planetary camera. This is sort of a proof of concept. I put a small little planetary camera on the end of my hyperstar. So a big telescope with a small camera.
What is that?
I wasn't
That
sure
is
if
the
the
crescent.
backspacing would work, but yeah, the noise level on this camera
Planetary
is
or
pretty low,
supernova?
Oh, which one is it? I thought it
That's
was a
hard.
planetary.
That's really hard to tell. I mean,
Yeah,
I'd say
there's some noise
planetary.
Find
up
out.
here, but I also use noise processing software to get some of the noise out. It was definitely more noisy than the cool cams. This is
It's an emission nebula.
yeah. Oh, what is it? It's the Crescent Nebula. It's an NGC something.
It's not a
Yep.
supernova.
60.
Yep, NGC 6888.
There you go.
Not a supernova.
The
It's an emission nebula.
I think I call it the Brain Nebula.
Hey,
That's what it looks like. But the camera was the ASI 585 MC.
We got 4 minutes until we go live with Dale.
2 degrees southwest of Sator.
God, Dale, and you only recently got into astrophotography, like within the last year or a couple years?
About I guess pushing 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, my theory is that the tools have been getting better and easier to use, making the
That
sky
helps.
more accessible.
Yeah.
The sky itself, these DSOs look like this. There's nothing, all you can do is reveal more data, but this data is out there. We have a thing where astrophotographers try to distinguish themselves by the way that they process images. Like this
this is the earlier process.
Yeah.
This is like my first year trying it. Same data.
Really?
Same data.
Yeah.
Dale,
We've
you
got
need to
this
do a
interstellar
presentation
medium
about this. This is fascinating.
Yeah.
This interstellar medium probably
sort of
belongs
thinking
here
about what
because-
my next presentation is going to be, but
This is fascinating. We're looking at the difference between this and talking about the tools. This is fascinating.
Okay.
Yeah, it even I can show you some stuff from my
Wow.
type of photography really, really quick. This will not be long, but even let's see, Dale Hollenbaugh will stop sharing content as soon as you start sharing. Okay, share. All right, really quick. From a year or so ago at a favorite location, this image, which I tried to reprocess, this is one side of the Al Sabo River and this part of the Milky Way coming over it. Well, a year later, this is the other side, and you might notice the difference in the way that this image ended up. And that was, I changed not only the way that I acquire the data and then sort of changed up the way that I process it. So we're always looking for new and different ways to capture. Well, if you've got good data, processing all of that good data comes out. If you don't get good data, it doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to get very good results. So a lot of, if you're doing good astrophotography, you are gathering good data. Much like my eyes compared to the eyes of a hawk that David has. If David looks into a telescope, he'll see and recognize more data in that eyepiece. I might look and see a blob, but David might see a lot more depending on the object that we're looking at. The more that you visually observe, the easier it is to see objects within an eyepiece. So it's just like everything just sort of grows. Astrophotography is no different from becoming a better visual observer too. So it's all repetition and kind of
All
knowing
right.
what
It is 8:20.
pieces.
Dale, are you ready to start?
There's Dale.
It is.
Yes, I am.
All righty. So I'll give everybody a few seconds to get back in your chair, get your drink and stuff. And over here. Okay, our feature presentation tonight is by our first vice president, Dale Partin. He is a Ph.D. from Carnegie-Mellon University. He formerly did advanced research in the auto industry. He has over 80 scientific publications and 38 patents. He's a fellow of the American Physical Society and a member of Sigma, oh God, how do you pronounce Sigma?
Sign.
Xi, thanks, and the American Scientific Affiliation. He teaches astronomy at Macomb Community College here in Michigan. He's been a member of the Warren Astronomical Society since 1998 and has frequently served as an officer, like he's doing now. His presentation is the Christmas Star, with Christmas safely in our rearview mirrors. He will cover the different theories and thoughts of the Star of Bethlehem and the pros and cons of each. With that, take it away, Dale.
Okay, thank you. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, we can.
Is that better?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Wow. The topic is the Christmas star. Obviously, things I say on a topic such as this do not represent the views of the Warren Astronomical Society. It's just my views. I'd like to talk about this picture of a conjunction between Jupiter and Venus and Mercury. A lot of us make a special point of going outside and doing some observing when there's going to be a close conjunction. It's just kind of neat to see this kind of thing. It looks kind of beautiful. Sometimes we may even think of the physics of the planets and their orbits around the sun. But some people see more than that. When I'm teaching introductory astronomy, excuse me a minute, my voice is getting hoarse. I'm teaching an introductory astronomy course right now. And one of the topics I cover is the history of astronomy and how it diverged from astrology some centuries ago. A lot of people have the two confused. And I typically ask for a show of hands in my class, how many people read their horoscopes at least sometimes. This time around, 2 days ago, when I asked the question in class, about a third of the class raised their hand. It's often half the class. A lot of them aren't really aware of the history of astrology. They don't know that the reason these astronomical objects like the sun and the moon and so forth are thought to have influences on people's lives is because these astronomical objects were thought of as gods. And when there's a conjunction between two such objects. Maybe those two gods get along and are compatible. Things go well. Maybe they're not compatible. I was just reading that Neptune and Mars are not compatible, for example. So the influences that come from these conjunctions of astronomical objects have variable effects, it is thought. So that's one way of getting additional meaning out of astronomical objects and events and so forth. I'd like, which is a sort of a polytheistic view of these things. Tonight, I'm going to talk about a monotheistic view. And one piece of that story is the verse I show here from the Hebrew Bible, Psalm 19. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. So there, it's a sense of, I guess I would say something like awe. Not that the things you're looking at are thought of as God, but as reflecting the things he has done or is doing in the sky. So I'm going to focus in ultimately here on the Christmas star and what meaning it is thought to have had. So I'd like to make clear a distinction between astrology and Jewish or Christian views of stuff in the sky. As we will see, the Christmas story, we'll talk about some guys called the Magi who came from the east to Israel because they saw some kind of star. The Magi probably came from Babylon or Babylonia, the area around Babylon. The word can be translated wise men, or, for example, it can be translated astrologers. They came from somewhere to the east of Israel. In Babylon, it's well known and documented that these astrologers watched closely what was going on in the sky and interpreted it. As will be discussed, the Magi who went to Israel, I suspect, may have been Jewish. More on that later. Astrology for them, if they were Jewish, would have been very different from astrology for others, those who put their faith in the sun and the moon and the stars, including planets, as their gods. For example, in the Hebrew Bible, in Deuteronomy, it says, "And beware, lest you raise your eyes to heaven, and when you see the sun and the moon and the stars, all the host of heaven, you be drawn away and bow down to them and serve them, rather than the one God of Judaism." So this apparently was a problem. They had to say, don't do that. Another verse from the Hebrew Bible, and God said, "Let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years." And then much later from the New Testament, a quotation of Jesus, "There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars." Signs. Constellations and asterisms also have significance in the Hebrew Bible. From the book of Job, for example, he, meaning God, is the maker of the Bear and Orion, the Pleiades and the constellations of the south. So it's not just stars, the sun, the moon, but constellations seem to have some significance. Obviously, most of you will immediately recognize on the left here the constellation of Orion. So, quite important to what I'm going to talk about tonight is an ancient prophecy in the Hebrew Bible. It says, I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star will come out of Jacob. A scepter will rise out of Israel. In Hebrew literature, it is very often the case, very often, that you'll have a statement and then you'll have a second statement that says something similar to what the first statement said. So I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near is kind of two parallel thoughts. And then a star will come out of Jacob. A scepter will rise out of Israel. Again, two parallel thoughts. Jacob is, in this case, another name for Israel. So this had long been understood within Judaism to be a messianic prophecy. It prophetically associates the future Messiah or king with a star. The word Messiah means the anointed one. So there's an association between the Messiah and a star prophetically. Historically, there were two, there was a long period of time when Rome controlled the land of Israel. There were two great revolts of the people of Israel against Roman rule. The first one started in 66 AD, and by 70 AD, the Romans conquered Jerusalem and destroyed the Jewish temple there. Later, in 132 CE or AD, there was a second revolt against Roman rule, and their leader, the Jewish leader of that revolt, named Simon, who is a direct descendant of David, was given the title Simon Bar Kokhba, Simon, son of the star. He was, as I understand it, thought to be the Messiah who would free them from Roman rule. However, the Romans marched legion after legion after legion of soldiers into Israel. And in 135 CE, the revolt was crushed and Simon Bar Kokhba was killed. So I'm going to walk you through a couple passages from the New Testament that talk about another star that was associated, at least in the minds of Christians, with the birth of Jesus. This is from the New Testament book of Luke. Shortly after the birth of Jesus is described. And in the same region, there were shepherds out in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And an angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were filled with great fear. The angel said to them, "Fear not, for behold, I bring you good news, great joy. Unto you is born this day in the city of David," which is Bethlehem, a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. Christ being a Greek-derived word that means the anointed one. Same thing as the Messiah. So I picked this artwork off the internet. The point I want to make here is there was some kind of brightness associated with the angel, or shining around the angel, something like that. The glory of the Lord shone around them. So that will be important later. By the way, can somebody with their microphone on tell me, can you see my cursor?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Good, thank you. So, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, who is a very important character in the story because we can kind of date his death, and that puts constraints on when this story happened. King Herod being a vassal king serving at the pleasure of the Roman emperor, king over Israel or Judea. During the time of King Herod, Magi, astrologers from the east, came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. Why was he disturbed? He didn't like the idea of a new king being born. He was the king. And it is well documented that King Herod was absolutely ruthless in killing anyone who showed the slightest challenge to his authority. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written," citing a prophecy from the Hebrew Bible. I think it's in the book of Micah. So they saw some kind of star, and it brought them to Jerusalem looking for the Messiah. What was the star that they saw, and how did it indicate that they should go to Israel to see a new king? What did they see? What might they have seen? Might be a better way to say it. So Herod then called the Magi back in to see him secretly, found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He did that because he wanted to know how old this new king was, so he'd know what age group to kill. He sent the Magi to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and again they see a star. So this is part 2 of the star story. And I will try to account for the star they saw that brought them from the east, and then the star they saw that led them from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. And the star they had seen went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. So it's rather peculiar. They're following the star, and then it stops over the place where the child was. Very difficult to think of what astronomical object could do that. So I'll be dealing with that. So when they saw the star over the place where the child was, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary. They bowed down and worshiped him. Excuse me. Okay. So I'm going to have to chew some gum. I apologize for that. My throat is getting really dry. So this is a map, obviously. Here's the area around Babylon. Here's Jerusalem over here someplace. They could have come straight, but that would have taken them through a huge desert. So they would have followed the usual trade route, and that would be roughly 1,000 miles. So a back of the envelope calculation, if they rode on camels and traveled about 10 miles per day, this journey would take them about 100 days. I found this in the book of Ezra in the Hebrew Bible. This man Ezra journeyed from Babylon to Jerusalem, and it took him 4 months. In pretty good agreement with this estimate here. If you read a little more of this, it talks about how dangerous this journey was. I think these magi would have had guards with them, servants to cook them food and whatever. Who were the magi? It's well known that there was a large Jewish community in Babylon and the country around Babylon, dating from the time of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, who had conquered Judea in 586 BCE. Many Jews, especially Jewish leaders, were deported to Babylon at that time, including a man named Daniel. This is well attested in the Hebrew Bible. He was eventually, he had very excellent skills. He was eventually appointed chief of the Babylonian astrologers. If you look in the book of Daniel in the Hebrew Bible, chapter 5, verse 11, it says that. Thus, some Babylonian astrologers or magi would have been Jewish. They would have been, so much later, they would have been highly motivated to travel to Israel to see the new king or Messiah if they thought he had been born. Judea was then a very small part of the Roman Empire, not especially important from an empire perspective. Who else but Jewish people would have cared about some new king being born in such a small place that they would have gone on a long and dangerous journey to try to see him? On the other hand, if they were Jewish, why did they need to ask where the new king of Israel was when they arrived in Jerusalem? They would have known that the Hebrew Bible said he would be born in Bethlehem. I surmise they would have assumed that the Messiah had been born in Bethlehem, but taken from Bethlehem to Jerusalem by the time they arrived some months later. So, celebrating the birth of Jesus was not something that the early church did. It just wasn't thought of as a holiday early on. Easter was a big holiday. So people kind of lost track of after some centuries of what day he was born and what year he was born. Our current BC and AD system of counting years, now often expressed as BCE, before the Common Era, and CE, the Common Era. That system of counting years originated with a Christian monk named Dionysus. I don't know how you say his name. That guy.
I think it's Dionysus.
Okay, Dionysus. How do you say his last name?
Exegeus.
Him, okay. I'll let Adrian pronounce it for me. Based on available records that he could find, he concluded that it had been 525 years since the Messiah was born. There was no year 0 in his dating system. Therefore, 1 AD comes right after 1 BC. He defined 1 AD as the year that Jesus was born. This is the system of counting years we use today. Now, several centuries pass. We come up to the early 17th century. In 1605, a Polish scholar named Laurentius Susliga looked into matters and said that the calculations of Dionysius were in error by 4 years. This meant that King Herod had died not in 1 AD, as had been thought, but in 4 BC. This implied that Jesus had been in 4 BC or somewhat earlier when Herod was still alive. That Polish scholar was a contemporary of Kepler. Any of you, I'm sure many of the people watching this presentation know who Kepler was, very famous in the history of astronomy. He was the one who came up with 3 laws of planetary motion in the solar system, finding, for example, that the planets orbited the sun in elliptical orbits with the sun at one of the foci of each ellipse. So uniquely, Johann Kepler was the first man in history who could reasonably accurately back calculate where the planets had been at times in the distant past. So Kepler heard about what this Polish scholar had said. He actually published a book on it. And Kepler used his newly discovered 3 laws of planetary motion to look for some kind of a significant astronomical star in the time frame of about 7 to 4 BC. He identified a triple conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn in the constellation Pisces, which means the fish, as the likely candidate. He read.
Can I interrupt you a second?
Yeah.
That is just amazing to me. How he had pencil and paper to do this with. How long do you think it would have taken him to do these calculations?
Well, a long time.
Yeah.
He didn't even have a slide rule, you know. I mean, he spent years and years working on this kind of stuff. This was basically his life's work, doing these kind of calculations. So, as I say, planets have conjunctions fairly often, but he identified a triple conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn and Pisces as the likely candidate. He read that some Jewish astrologers associated Pisces with the house of Israel. For them, Jupiter was the royal star of the house of David, and Saturn was the protecting star of Israel, the Messiah's star. So he thought, this is it. I mean, his calculations do not take into account gravitational perturbations of the planetary orbits. For example, the orbit of Mars around the sun is not just determined by the gravity of the sun, but Jupiter can perturb the orbit of Mars, for example.
And he
So
wouldn't
that
have
would have
known
made
about
his,
Uranus.
yeah.
Would have to.
So his calculations were not perfect, but they were good enough. There are even finer corrections to his model due to general relativity. But again, nothing that was a big enough perturbation to affect his findings. So here is what modern software will show you. Here is Jupiter, highlighted by these symbols here, and here's Saturn. So back in 7 BC, or BCE, on these dates, there were conjunctions between Jupiter and Saturn, one here, one here, and one here. In the constellation of Pisces, here's an imaginary drawing of two fish connected by some fishing line or a rope or something. So he thought, this is it. Interestingly, some archaeologists had gone to the area of ancient Babylon in the late 1800s and early 1900s and had brought back thousands and thousands of clay tablets with ancient writing on them. In 1925, such a text was found in the British Museum and it was deciphered. The line that's being pointed to there, I got this off of a BBC analysis of what the Star of Bethlehem might have been. So that's, I captured that right off of the screen. It says Jupiter and Saturn were in Pisces, written in 7 BC. There's no statement in the text of what significance this had for them. I think to most Babylonian astrologers, this would have meant little, or they wouldn't have thought to associate it with Israel. Actually, I see there's an error in what I wrote here. I say Israel was a small part of the Roman Empire. Actually, that would have been relevant. That was the time period when Rome was in power over Israel. So what would it have meant to the average Babylonian astrologer? But if some of the astrologers were Jewish, and if Kepler, what he had heard from his Polish scholar was correct, then this might have made them want to go to Israel to see the newborn Messiah. So that's one theory. Other possibilities within the date range of 7 to 4 BC might have included other things that could have looked like a significant star, like a supernova or a nova. Kepler would not have had access to ancient Chinese or Babylonian records to see if there had been a supernova, for example. Kepler actually saw the one, really bright one, in 1604 AD. But looking at those, so he had no access to these records from Babylon or China. But modern scholars who have looked at that stuff find no report of a supernova or nova in 7 to 4 BC. There was a report of something called a broom star in Chinese records dated March, April 5 BC, probably a comet. However, comets were generally interpreted as meaning that something bad was about to happen. So likely not a comet. In fact, I can tell you that in Israel, comets were viewed as a sign of something bad. I found this in the writings of a Jewish historian named Josephus. He wrote a series of books published in 74 AD or CE. Josephus is, he was a Jewish Pharisee. So he wrote something called Wars of the Jews. And if you go to this link I show here and look for book 6, chapter 5, paragraph 3, you will find the following statement leading up to somewhat before the destruction of the Jewish temple by the Romans in 70 AD. There were signs of something bad to come. One of those 7 signs that Josephus talks about, he says, thus there was a star resembling a sword which stood over the city, and a comet that continued a whole year. So again, this is this Jewish or Hebrew style of writing where you say something and then you say it again in different words. So a star resembling a sword or a comet is 2 ways of saying the same thing. And it illustrates that comets in Israel in this time frame, 1st century, were thought of as portending something bad that was going to happen.
So how could a comet hang over anything for a whole year?
I don't know. I mean, comets can hang around for some months. I don't know. That's what it says in this ancient book. Maybe he meant most of a whole year. I don't know. So much for looking at possible star candidates in the 7 to 4 BC timeframe. However, there are some recent scholars who have examined the ancient manuscripts that the calculations were based on, that say that Herod actually died in 4 BC, according to that Polish scholar back in the early 1600s. That work has been recently re-examined by a number of scholars, and they say no, partly because they found more ancient copies of Josephus' writings than the ones available to that Polish scholar. And they found some things had been miscopied, but that's not the only problem they had found. So they say that Herod actually died in 1 BC. This leads to searching for a suitable star that would have been visible around 3 to 1 BC that could have been associated with the Messiah's birth. So, again, no records of a supernova, a comet, no records of one in this time frame. So, a significant conjunction. A good possibility is a triple conjunction of Jupiter and the star Regulus in the constellation Leo in 3 BC. Here you see the star, a bright star Regulus. Jupiter comes in and has a conjunction, goes into retrograde motion, back this way, a second conjunction there, then resumes normal motion relative to the distant stars, and a third conjunction with Regulus there. Jupiter, the king planet, Regulus, sometimes called the king star, in the constellation of Leo, the lion. So in the Hebrew Bible, there's a place where one of the patriarchs named Jacob pronounces blessings on his 12 sons. And on the son called Judah, he said, "You are a lion's cub, Judah. You return from the prey, my son. Like a lion, he crouches, lies down. Like a lioness, who dares to rouse him? The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nation shall be his." So in Jewish teaching, the Messiah was to come from Judah, the lion. So this could have signified to Jewish astrologers in Babylon, when they saw this triple conjunction in Leo, that the Messiah was born in Judah, or the Romanized version, Judea. So at this point, I'm going to jump into the New Testament, into the last book of the New Testament called Revelations, where it says, "A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun." The woman is, in this interpretation, going to be the constellation Virgo. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads, 10 horns, 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth, so that it might devour her child the moment he was born. She gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule the nations with an iron scepter. Okay, here is the triple conjunction of Jupiter and Regulus in Leo. Here is the constellation Virgo, clothed with the sun here's the sun on September the 11th, 3 BC. And the moon at her feet, here's the moon. And by the way, you know, if you say, what if you change this date by 1 day earlier or later? The moon is something like this far from here or this far. It moves quite a bit. So you have to be pretty close to 11 BC, September the 11th in 3 BC to have the moon at her feet. The dragon, serpens, here's serpens, this big snake-like thing, stood in front of the woman. The dragon would symbolize King Herod acting under the influence of Satan, the dragon. And a crown of 12 stars on her head. So I zoomed in on this here. I don't know if you can see, there's some stars like this on her face and so forth. So I zoomed in and highlighted a ring of 12 stars. Doesn't exactly fit on her head very well. If you drew her slightly different, you could make her head be over more or less in the center of that crown of 12 stars. So, you know, it's kind of interesting that this triple conjunction thing fits with Virgo and the sun and the moon at her feet. Here's this serpent. There's another possibility. This was September the 11th, 3 BC. Another possibility from a Christian perspective is this could have been the date of the Annunciation, as it's called, when an angel spoke to Mary saying she would give birth to the Messiah. 9 months and a few days later, on June 17, 2 BC, there was an extremely close conjunction between Jupiter and Venus in Leo. So a variation of the theory that this was the actual date of the birth of Jesus. So that's a second theory. I have one more theory. This is not exactly an astronomical theory. This third theory is that the star that the Magi saw that led them from Babylon to Jerusalem was an angel. Biblical accounts of angels sometimes mention that they are bright like fire, shining. From the New Testament book of Hebrews, for example, it says, in speaking of the angels, he says, he makes his angels spirits and his servants flames of fire. Again, parallelism. So the wise men or magi in Babylon may have seen an angel high in the sky so that it appeared to be a new star. Maybe the star was in Leo, for example, I don't know, or moved in some way to catch their attention. It somehow signified to them that an important new king had been born. It then moved to the west. They followed the star and led them to Israel. They went to the capital city, Jerusalem, inquired where the new king was. They said, go to Bethlehem. Pretty simple. That's the third theory. So those three theories can get you from somewhere around Babylon to Jerusalem. The much tougher thing is to find an astronomical explanation that could take the Magi to a specific place in Bethlehem. After they had heard King Herod The Magi went on their way. The star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. Astronomical things don't do that. You cannot look up at a star in the sky and say, that star is over my next door neighbor's house. You cannot do that. Even if it was, it would only be over that house for a millisecond because of the rotation of the Earth. We're moving at hundreds of miles an hour because of the rotation of the Earth. So it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary. They bowed down and worshiped him. So Bethlehem is only about something like 5 miles south of Jerusalem. So the star at the, again, even if what brought the Magi from Babylon to Jerusalem was a conjunction, a triple conjunction, that kind of thing, I think the best theory I can think of for how they could have been led right to the place where the child was at this stage of the journey, it was an angel leading them. And it descended to low altitude. Here's a picture I pulled off the internet of the Magi coming to Bethlehem with a bright star up there. I put a little star down here. Symbolizing or showing an angel at low enough altitude that they could see where to go. The story starts with an angel speaking to the shepherds, a star of some kind, then leads the Magi to Jerusalem, and then I suggest an angel leads them to a house in Bethlehem. How old was Jesus when the wise men arrived in Jerusalem? Then Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, became furious. He sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and in all that region who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had ascertained from the wise men. Many Christians commonly take this to mean that Jesus was about 2 years old at this time. I think that's absolutely not the case. If Herod thought Jesus was 2, he would have said, kill all the boys who were 4 and under. They weren't checking birth certificates. He wanted to make sure he got them. So I think Jesus was significantly less than 1 year old, maybe 4, 5, 6 months old. Again, Herod is very well documented, especially in the writings of Josephus, as being utterly ruthless. So this is not the end of my presentation, but at this point, I'll say a belated Merry Christmas to everyone, or if you prefer, Happy Holidays. I'd like to cover just a little more. We just covered a star as a sign used to bring the Magi from the east to Jesus after his birth. I'd like now to look at another star very briefly, used to prophetically foretell a future coming of Jesus as the Messiah. I found this verse maybe 3 years ago and thought a lot about it. This is in the final book of the New Testament, the final chapter, a few verses from the end of the Christian Bible. I, Jesus, have sent my angel to give you this testimony for the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David, and the bright morning star. So I thought, what does this mean? And is it connected to something astronomical? Well, we all know that Venus is called the morning star or the evening star, depending on where it is in the sky. And I checked, and Venus has been known as the morning star way back in ancient times. It is, as everyone, I think, in this organization, this society knows, the brightest astronomical object in the night sky other than the moon. Here it is. Venus, we know it's a planet, but it looks like a very bright star. To the ancients, it was a star. This, again, from the Hebrew Bible, the prophet Isaiah, talking about the king of Babylon. You will take up this taunt against the king of Babylon, how the oppressor has come to an end, how his fury has ended, how you have fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations. So it's very common for kings back then to say that they were divine, descended from gods, from the stars. This king of Babylon had apparently taken on the title Morning Star, Son of the Dawn, meaning when you see Venus in the eastern sky, you know that dawn is coming soon. So he had assumed that title, and Isaiah was saying that title's not going to stick. So here in the New Testament book of Revelations, Jesus says, I am the bright morning star. So what did he mean? A few verses earlier, he said, behold, I am coming soon. He actually says it again a few verses before that. A few verses after this, he says, surely I am coming soon. That's the second to the last verse of the New Testament. Here's the last verse. So from the context, I think he is saying that when we see Venus in the morning star as the morning star, prophetically, I mean, here's the moon and the sun is just below the horizon. Prophetically, when we see Venus as the morning star, that means the day of his coming is coming soon. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention. Happy to have comments and questions.
Well, back when I was doing my weekly in the sky post for the VOF, I mean, Venus appeared in the morning sky like quite frequently
Yeah,
in the course of several years. So it's always there at some time during the year.
Yeah,
yeah,
this year, I think something went out in social media about the Star of Bethlehem coming, or you could see the Star of Bethlehem, and it was going to be on the morning of the solstice or winter. I think it's winter solstice. Someone produced a picture, and it had the diffraction spikes through Venus. So at my church, nightscapes and night sky stuff, and they show me the picture, and you're saying here it is, Star of Bethlehem, and I have to say it doesn't look that way to your eyes. That's Venus, but you can get a picture like that if you go take it into Photoshop and put a diffraction. You can basically edit it to throw a diffraction spike through there, and because sorry about that, because it has the look of the cross. To many people, it instantly gets interpreted, as a spiritual star. So I found your presentation um, interesting at how, sometimes we'll say common man, and we look up and get spiritual. It means something spiritual to see a picture like that. Whenever I post online, I get many that'll react to that way to a particular picture, and then others, just talk about the pure, the astronomy, the pure, the what's visible in the sky itself. So I did find the presentation very interesting,
Thank you.
formative.
Dale, I have to admit, my science fiction addled brain, when you said the star hovered over a spot, I'm thinking time travelers with a drone with a loudspeaker and super bright LEDs could do that.
Well, often
Or ball lightning, but ball lightning's not going to speak to anybody.
ball lightning says get indoors. No, there are times when I try to time up images because I want something in the night sky to be there, and it'll sit there, it appears to sit there for a time. But anyone who's ever been outside and just sort of watched as the sky moves, it moves pretty quickly. After a while, you go, hey, that was just over there. At our Earth's rotation, you begin to notice it. So we know in the natural world, here I am, a Catholic, saying all this now. We know in the natural world that the stars generally don't move still, and um, and yet we know that we can take I can take a series of pictures and stack them, and the movement will be maybe half an inch or so. So the appearance of it's the appearance of standing still, unless you're there for like an hour. Then you notice, okay, something's moved. So
Well, but the problem is, you even if you don't think about the rotation of the Earth, when you look up at the sky, can you say that a particular star is over that house?
I can say a particular star is over a tree, but said star will move in about
If I move 100
5 minutes.
meters to the left, it won't be over that house anymore.
Yeah. I have a I have a picture. In fact, I tried to time a picture, and this was ironic enough. It was on the 21st. We finally had a clear sky. The star Betelgeuse was sitting over an evergreen at an angle where I was standing. I took the picture when Betelgeuse was over the center of that evergreen. About 5 minutes later, it's moved off pretty significantly. So yeah, it doesn't stay over the house unless it's an awful long. It would have to be an awful long manger, and it would have to give that star or planet or whatever it is time to rotate and yet be visually still over the house. So there's some imagination that could go into play as to what the Magi saw.
How
Yeah.
long was it supposed to have been visible?
Um, I forget, wasn't it in your presentation, Dale?
What do you mean exactly?
The start, well, when they saw it, from the time that they first saw it until the time they last saw it, how long was it visible in the sky?
It depends on which theory you buy into, if you buy into one of them. If it was a conjunction in a particular constellation, they saw the conjunction. So you know, the planets move on, but they had seen it in the constellation, the triple conjunction or whatever. So they would not continue to see it as they journey to Jerusalem. They go to Jerusalem and ask, where is the new king?
That triple conjunction is really cool. How long do you think that would take? Probably a couple weeks for that whole sequence to go through?
I had the dates on the slide, I
Yeah,
think.
okay.
Riyadh wants to say something.
Yeah, I think one thing we should keep in mind is that we shouldn't take these writings literally. So if they say it moved and if they say it stopped, think about in terms of like this triple conjunction or any other conjunction when the planet is in retrograde motion. Before it gets to retrograde motion, what does it do? It stops and changes direction. So when they're saying it stopped, I think maybe what they do mean is that it starts in the retrograde motion.
Oh, wait a minute. That's what, according to the theory, got them heading to Jerusalem from Babylon. Later, after they arrive in Jerusalem, they see the star and it leads them to Bethlehem, and they see it over the place where the child was. Two separate things.
I wouldn't, not necessarily two separate things, because how long would it take a conjunction like that to take place? If it was, let's say, a triple conjunction, it may take a while, right? It's going to take, I don't know, does it take 2, 3 months until they get there?
Well, I gave the estimated time as
Yeah, it's
4
months.
Okay. So,
If you want, I can put the presentation back up and we can see.
Yeah. I mean, could a conjunction like that take enough time? And again, maybe what they're writing versus what they're seeing. It's, you know, this is not a, you know, a scientific observational report. It's written more in terms of, you know, of course, it's written also after it happened, right, by many years.
Right.
So it could be. I would say we shouldn't take it literally in terms of it moved, they followed it, it stopped. It doesn't mean the star itself stopped. It just could be that, you know, the retrograde motion, I think, is before you come to it, the planet stops and then it changes direction.
Well, here's an interesting thought. Back to what was dubbed the Christmas star in 2020 or 2021 when Saturn and Jupiter came close as far as our viewpoint from Earth. I know that for some time the planets appeared close and they just got closer, and then the planets, began to move their separate ways. But wasn't it around 4 months or so that the two planets were visibly close to one another? And then you had the one day when they got the closest, and we were all imaging it in our telescopes, Saturn in the top, Jupiter at the bottom, or vice versa. So just for thoughts, the conjunction itself, how long do the actual participants of a conjunction stay together, and how, might that, what you said, of course, Riyadh, even we in Catholic, the Catholic Church knows that that's, how the texts are written. But could it be possible, the conjunction loosely stayed together? It's still a conjunction, even though it may be here today, then it's here the next day, and it's moving along, all the way till, it takes some time before they're finally so far apart that you wouldn't consider it a conjunction anymore. So just some thoughts.
All right. Any other questions or comments for Dale? All right. Well, it is 9:30. Ding. All right. Well, thank you, Dale, and thank you everyone for attending. Good deal. Dale, a round of applause. There we go. So our next meeting will be on February 6th in person at Cranbrook and virtual. In the past, at this time, we would adjourn to a Coney Island and have a meal and talk astronomy, but sadly, it doesn't translate very well into this digital medium. So we're going to bid everyone adieu. Have a good evening, and again, thank you, Dale. Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
I still like the idea of the time travelers with the drone.